everyone, welcome to our bonus episode. This week we are doing listener questions. I'm Gemma.
I'm Michael.
We're a Coronation Street podcast that
Just in
does
case you didn't know.
listener questions every now and then.
Occasionally. I can't remember. When did we do this last? August, September?
I don't know, but I like it. If you want us to answer a question about Coronation Street, please do email us, conversationstreet@gmail.com.
We'll add it to the list.
Add it to the list.
Yeah.
Laura is the first person who has a question, and she wants to know, if you could make any character become the new villain of the street, who would you choose and what would they do, or who would they kill off?
I like how they're appealing
Laura.
to what we like by asking about villains. We
Laura's like,
did
how
a
do I
lot
get
of
this
villains
answer?
chat recently,
How do I get
especially
this
with all the
question
Stephen
answer?
Reed
Yeah,
thing.
exactly.
But Stephen's gone, so it's time for a new villain on the street. I mean, we've got
to replace
Mason,
him
we've got
ASAP.
Dom, but
Do you think it's going to be Mason?
Well,
Dom?
the character is more about who is currently good that could become bad.
The question.
But I don't know. I'm enjoying Mason at the moment. I don't know whether at the moment he's going to be up there, but I think he's an effective toe rag.
There are so many people who are blinded by the entire concept of bullying and villainy, who cannot seem to get that you do need baddies in the show. They hate Mason so much. The actor who plays Mason, I hope he's not on social media.
He's on Instagram. Luca Tula.
There are so many people that are just really horrible about the character. Because
I think sometimes villains like that.
No, well, listen.
Like actors
I'm
playing
telling
villains,
you,
I mean.
if you're a villain and social media is full of stuff of people saying, hate the storyline, hate this character, hate the actor, hate the way he looks, hate the way he does this
What about
and that
something
and the other
like
thing.
petition?
But I'm just telling you that it means you're doing a good job.
Yeah, I was just going to say, petition to have Amy beat Mason over the head with a protest sign, as you posted last night.
Yeah, but I deliberately made it obvious I was talking about the characters.
Yeah. So
Let's not
we've been asked.
Let's not be mean about.
We've been asked to find
everybody.
a new villain out of Corrie's current crop of goodies, and it's not.
They're all a bunch of disgusting do-gooders, aren't they?
Yeah. This has been done in the past. It's not a common thing. Usually, characters are brought in, and the villain alert siren goes off because it's so obvious when they step into the scene. Like, here comes a baddie.
Some of the biggest names in Corrie villainry weren't necessarily obvious from the beginning.
I would say
Pat Phelan is the one who was brought in as a villain and progressed to become more and more evil as time went on.
Yeah, he was a nasty piece of work from the off.
Like Stephen, Uncle Stephen, God rest his soul. He was just a normal businessman for ages.
Well, yeah, for a good 25 years, there was not a villainous bone in his body.
I am honestly wondering if say the character of Mike Baldwin had made it to current era, would he have become a serial killer?
I wonder.
Because businessmen on Coronation Street
sounds a bit like Jump the Shark moment.
It does,
there,
but isn't that
it?
what kind of... Sometimes that's what being a Corrie villain is about, is jumping the shark. Jumping over the shark and riding a dolphin into the sunset.
I don't think I'd like the idea
flipping everyone off.
I don't think I'd like the idea after all those years of Mike Baldwin suddenly going bad, but I wouldn't put it past
Whoa.
producers. I know he was bad.
Going bad?
No, I know. He was...
He's an antagonist.
Yeah, he absolutely
So there's
is.
definitely a difference. So antagonists and villains are definitely two different categories, but they can overlap. So antagonist is just somebody who thwarts the hero, right?
Yeah.
Who has a kind of alternate goal that gets in the way of the hero. And a villain is obviously somebody who's just evil.
Evil for
like
the sake of...
Ursula from The Little Mermaid.
It seems like Ian McLeod quite likes taking established good characters and giving them a bit of an edge, because as well as Stephen, we also had Gary. I think that feels like that was fairly early on in Ian's tenure, wasn't it? Coming in and saying, well, we're gonna get the new Ken and Mike. This is gonna be Gary versus, I can't remember who he was supposed to be against at the moment, but he really tried to sell it that Gary was going to revisit his dark roots. And he did for a bit, although I don't think I wouldn't say he was ever villain, was he? But maybe, I can't remember exactly what Ian said. I think it's clear he didn't want to turn him into the type of villain that has got a shelf life, because that's the problem with this.
You're right.
If we're saying which of our current characters do we want to make into a villain, we're kind of saying who are we going to be counting down the months, years for, before they're gone.
So wise.
Thanks. But Gary's he's just kind of gone back to being good now. He just had a villainous spell and he dipped his toe into villainy, didn't he? Killed a couple of people and decided... Well, yeah, Rick Nealon and Rana. I still blame him for that, you know. And now he's back to just being normal and nice again.
Dabbler.
And I wonder whether the way that Gary's story has gone over the past few years is as Ian McLeod envisioned, or did he actually plan for him to keep that nasty side to him permanently? Because as I say, he's definitely not like that anymore. He's had a kind of redemption. Corrie would say that he's been redeemed with those final scenes with Kelly last year, but I'm still not so sure. I still need him to pay for his crime of dropping a roof on poor Rana.
I'd love Gary to be a villain in the sort of vein of Dorothy from Wizard of Oz crossed with Dexter, dropping houses on witches.
I don't think that Gary. I know he started off as a wrong un, but when I first heard the news that Ian McLeod was hoping to turn him bad, I was fairly cautious of the plans, and I think I was right. I enjoyed his time
Gary's villain era was my favourite.
Yeah, as the lone shark, the lone ginger, remember? But I like him as he is now. I think it's partly because to do with since then we've met Mikey North and chatted to him. He's a nice guy, really. Can't see you as a baddie.
I don't think I've ever met him.
Yes,
I met him when we went to the studio.
Yeah,
but you've
I've met him a couple of times. Another one. Sharon Bentley Gaskell was used to be good and came back recently. Well, how long ago was it now? How long ago was it till she tasered?
Yeah. Now, hang on, Michael. Let's be clear, because there are two evil Sharons.
Yes, I'm not talking about Sharon Lone Shark.
Sharon, who's the loan shark, who was...
Gary's,
I don't know, right-hand woman.
Yeah, after Rick popped his clog. No, I'm talking about Sharon Bentley, the foster daughter of Rita, who was definitely a bit of a goodie. Although I suppose in the day, she did go after Brian, didn't she? She did try and steal Brian off of Gail back in the late 80s.
Is that a villain?
It shows a mischievous side, I suppose.
I'm not
trying to split up beloved...
women who
Tillsleys.
steal other people's men are not villains. They're just sexy.
But I think it was definitely, in her last appearance, she definitely taken that turn down the route.
Well, this is a good question. How many women have the potential here for true villainy?
I think if we're looking for characters in the current crop of the cast that could make villains, I would quite like to look at the women, because Corrie is one of the things that fans will say is that there aren't enough legendary Corrie villains.
Now there are some.
We've got at the moment, like Debbie has the potential to be villainous, but is she already villainous, or is she just a bit of a chancer? She's got the ruthless business side, and so many of Coronation Street's villains have been businessmen, like Tony Gordon, Frank Foster.
There's honestly, if you're a businessman on Corrie, you are just in the eye.
If you wear a
suspicion.
shirt and tie, absolutely.
No one trusts you.
No. But we also Maya. She was a big-ish.
Sorry, who?
Maya.
Who?
Maya Sharma.
Do you mean Mad Maya?
Mad Maya. Sorry, yeah. We're currently on ITV3 seeing her
another
roots.
Example. She is an educated woman. So she wasn't a businesswoman, but she was a lawyer, right?
If you're not working class.
If you're not working class, and you can wear a suit to work, you're probably going to kill somebody.
We've seen a couple of months of her on Classic Corrie on ITV3 at the moment, and she's already starting to be a bit of a femme fatale. But I wouldn't say that when she came in, she was anywhere near as crazy as she ended up being. But I don't know whether the plan for her all along was she's going to end up burning down all of Dev's shops and try and kill him.
She's fantastic.
Go in a blazing inferno.
I would love to have Maya back. And, if you're going to talk about unhinged women, because, unfortunately, when it comes to villainy, if you're a woman... Like, men, there seems like there's a massive world of villainy that men can inhabit. But if you're a woman, you're either nuts or you're sexy. And Maya straddled, like, she was both. But I'm going to say, I think there's untapped potential here for nuttery. And I'm using that in a fictional term, for Mary. She kidnapped Norris.
Yeah.
and kept him in the bed a la Misery. It was obviously a homage to Stephen King's Misery, where the author was kept in bed by this crazy woman.
As interesting as that might be, I think if they tried to make Mary into a villain now, it would be too late.
It would be, but
they,
it would also
they
be
could
way
have gone down
funnier.
that road with her, but people would say no, that's not.
No, it'd be way
realistic enough
funnier than
now.
what happened with Steve. Like, Stephen was camp and hilarious, but also very dark. I think they would just turn into absolute panto.
I'd want to see
Mary-
it done really realistically. One of my favourite Corrie examples of a character that started good and absolutely defended into villainy was Don Brennan, because he was just a decent chap, wasn't he, when he came into it in the 80s, and he
became desperate.
Yeah, his desperation, and he was turned nuts in the fictional sense as well, by
Because,
being married to Ivy.
Just to be clear, Coronation Street and all fiction doesn't necessarily depict mental illness in the most favourable light.
Not always.
And when you're thinking about what makes somebody evil or, homicidal, it is very easy to stigmatise mental health. We're not doing that here. We're just saying, fictionally speaking, the idea that you would want to attack somebody doesn't seem like a kind of balanced thing to do.
Don Brennan, I felt, having watched the episodes back over the last few years, that his descent into darkness was it was done at a good pace.
But it also felt I think
he was leaving dodgy phone calls for Denise, and then he got obsessed by Mike Baldwin, didn't he? And Mike Baldwin basically wound him up so much that
he's annoying.
He ended up driving his car into the viaduct and exploding in a fiery inferno. I think that he tried to kill. He drove Alma into the canal, didn't he? Yeah.
I was doing this with my hands.
Jeff Hinsliff was absolutely fantastic at doing that.
Did you notice?
Yeah, I can see. And Don Brennan's final week on Coronation Street was absolutely superb. I love that. And I know lots of people who liked Don before didn't like that story, but having come in and just kind of watched it after the fact almost that it happened, I thought that was really
You can't
well
bring
done.
him back.
No, you can't. The question isn't who we're going to bring back. We're just kind of discussing.
Yeah, but he's dead.
I know. I'm just talking about ways they've done it in the past.
Okay.
That one worked well. It was acted very well. It wasn't at all camp, and we got to see the reasons for and the slow decline into darkness and madness. And he had he tried to kill himself. He ended up losing a leg, didn't he, in the accident when he was driving too fast because he was just driven insane by Ivy. And so that really worked for me.
It's like desperate. It's like a psychic enactment of all the frustrations, and when you're watching it as a viewer too, you're thinking, drive into the canal. I'm sick and tired of all this rubbish. Let's just drive into the canal.
Jim was another one, wasn't he? Who, although when he first started in '89, the McDonald's came in, you could always tell that Jim was not the person that you want to get on the wrong side of. He was, he had his army background. Yeah, exactly.
Physically violent. With
but
family.
even
again,
you got the idea that the McDonald boys got the slipper, but it wasn't until a few years later that we really saw him getting physical with Liz, and then he went through so much trauma, and he got pushed off the balcony. He was in a wheelchair for a bit. He was and then by the time what properly marked him as a villain, I suppose, was when he ended up being thrown in jail for the manslaughter of Jez Quigley, although that was understandable because he was just protecting his son. That character-driven descent into darkness worked well for me, as much as I was sad to see him go when he was thrown in prison. It did get a little bit silly when he was holding up the building society with a shotgun, and the less said about this recent return the better. But that worked really well for me, and it's not necessarily a route that you would have foreseen for Jim within his first few months or years of the show.
I guess the question is also, like, what do you think a villain is? Is a villain somebody who struggles with their inner demons? Like, I would call Jim, I would say the same about Don. They really hurt themselves more than they hurt other people. And it was a kind of a mental health thing before we really...
Yeah, it didn't fly the flag and have Charlie Lawson going onto the TV and say, "So let me tell you about Jim's mental health struggles, are we?"
Yeah, it's not something that makes sense. You don't want to stigmatise people with mental health struggles. But it's interesting to sort of look at those characters and say, they hurt people, but they hurt themselves more. Same with Tracy. Totally backfired what she tried to do. She was cold-blooded. This was not a mental health issue. This was her.
Oh, when she
calculatedly bludgeoning a man to death after she set him up as an abuser, and then it all backfired in her face.
Tracy's change from she was never a hero, was she? I think when she was a young girl, she was fairly kind of blandly nice, but we could see through her teenage years she was becoming a bit of a rebel. But it was when, after she'd been away for a few years and came back as Kate Ford, that they clearly had her set on a path of, I guess it was mischief maker at the beginning, wasn't it? And thorn in people's side, and just generally, I don't care, I'm all out for myself. Many Corrie viewers don't like the fact that she killed Charlie and thought that took it too far. But we look at Tracy at the moment, and she's lost almost everything of that edge. She's not lovely, happy, sunshine, smiley,
I'm going to tell
mumsy
you,
kind of person, but she's not the same kind of villain that she was, say, 5-10 years ago.
There's a character who's slightly analogous to how Tracy was antagonistic to people before she bumped off Charlie. And the current character I can think of, which probably might surprise people, is Beth.
Do you think?
And the same with some of Steve's more famous wives. A lot of those were antagonistic towards other people, especially Karen.
Karen really was.
You could have made Karen a murderer. You could make Beth a murderer.
I wouldn't. I think I might like that with Beth, because she's gone down. I'm not sure that she's many people's favourite character at the moment, but maybe.
But she's charisma. She's got charisma. She was likeable to begin with.
I'm not convinced whether Beth, the character, is smart enough to play a convincing villain. I like my villains to be devious and scheming.
Yes.
And
they've got to be one step ahead, don't they?
Yeah, and I don't see Beth as being that. She's more just like they're getting
impulsive,
annoyed and being narky in the street at somebody.
I can't see her plotting the same way that Tracy and Maya.
No, not at all. I
did.
No, but.
And you've got.
I mean, she slapped Hope this year, hasn't she? So maybe this is the start of the slippery slope.
Talking about female villains, Sharon, she was just involved. She was embroiled in a drugs family.
Yeah. So
it kind of felt like her hand was forced in a way to protect her family at times.
Yeah, you got various reasons for turning to the dark side, like this.
Do you think that sometimes the women get more of a sob story, for want of a better word, for why they might? Are we more sympathetic sometimes?
I don't know. I'd have to think of
if you think of Maya, it was Maya versus Sunita, and Sunita was such a little doe-eyed, like a sad woman,
Yeah.
She was like Weatherfield's answer to Princess Diana. She's just tragic mum.
She had a bit of more spark to her.
But compared to Maya, for goodness sake, I think a lot of the times the men are just, men are evil. We don't need to explain the backstory. Whereas women, it's like, we've got to explain why this lovely lady.
Somebody like Alan Bradley was just he started off as good. And I think Alan Bradley being
the one who got
Jenny's
run over
dad
by a tram.
He came in as good, and Mark Eden, after he'd been in the show for a year or so, I think the story goes, was they were finding, we don't know what to do with this guy now. And then they say, what if he stole then Faircliffe's identity? And then that's like, that would work. And Mark Eden played him brilliantly. So
here's something out of left field.
What?
Who's currently stealing somebody's identity on Coronation Street?
Daisy? Being Crystal?
Ed Bailey.
Oh yeah, he has, hasn't he? He's sent off to be Norris Cole.
Yes. Now, hang on a minute. Now, this not
Ed Bailey
be incredible? It's like an evil Father Christmas.
Yeah. Like that one off Futurama.
I would love that if that would really set a fire under the Baileys, wouldn't it? I don't know if it would happen.
I don't think he could pull off villain. I don't.
But then Corrie could do their thing where how they want to be Corrie's first, whatever. Corrie's first black murderer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course, that sounds great.
Do you like it when characters are changed from good to bad? Because there's a real risk of feeling like it's jumping the shark and a massive twist in character motivations.
I think Stephen's the first time they really took somebody kind of fairly neutral and went, yeah, you're a killer now.
But what if he were bad? Yeah, I suppose a lot of the other ones have had a more... I suppose with, like with John Stape, did he turn bad? He wasn't really a villain, was he? He was an accidental killer, yeah.
I think they're really good at sort of taking somebody and going, what would be the trigger here? What's you on your worst day?
But I think even...
That's the thing about soaps though, isn't it? Because they're talking about ordinary people, you know, even though they're caricatures. It's like, on your worst day, what are you capable of? And that's why we're kind of fascinated with these villains. Like, if you push me so hard, would I drown a man in a pool after drugging him with LSD in his wine glass? I don't know. Let's find out.
Well,
Let's watch.
Stephen also started with accidental kills, didn't he? And
Yeah.
it wasn't until his third one that he went with the intention of bumping him off.
Every serial villain on Corrie, you know, serial killer on Corrie has started off an accidental kill.
And then realised that they can get away with it. Yeah, absolutely. I do like I suppose the positive of turning a good character villainous is the potential for moral ambiguity, and Phelan was the best for this, wasn't he? Like, I could be good, I could be bad. Which path do I go down? I'm not a killer, or am I?
He said that's, you know, with Andy, he was really
exactly what I'm thinking
torn
of,
about
the scene in the cellar.
Do I kill you?
So that's quite good, and it also gives a bit of a surprise factor, because I'd like to go back in time a year and a half, and say, you know what, guess who's going to be the next serial killer? Yeah, Stephen Reed, just to see the surprise on my face.
You don't really need to imagine it, because we were there.
I suppose
when we found out before almost
true.
Anyone else.
That's true.
Who wasn't involved in Corrie.
Yeah, I suppose one of the big problems with it is you risk alienating fans of a certain character. So if you get a well-liked character and you turn them into a villain, or we've kind of seen it a little bit with Daisy this year, haven't we?
Yes, I was literally thinking of Daisy.
One of the most popular characters, and with huge online fan bases at the beginning of the year, and some of her choices this year, particularly with impersonating Crystal and going after Ryan, she's not liked as much anymore.
Right,
but she's not a villain.
Can I say, I don't want to put words in people's mouths, and I'm not. This fan base for Daisy are seemingly young women who are of similar age and kind of identify with her. But I'm going to predict that they would actually rather she killed somebody than cheated on Daniel.
You reckon?
Yes. Because the thing about it is, it's so super melodramatic and completely out of the realm of possibility in real life that it's weird. You kind of judge characters less for things that are so outrageous that would never happen in real life. I mean, I know murders happen. I've seen stories. I've heard of them. Yeah. But do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if she could. Can you imagine her being some kind of avenging angel for women who've been... Imagine if she got involved in, like, Amy's spiking story and she just killed men who spiked women.
Well, I think this is a bit like what the Breeder McQueen story was like in Hollyoaks when they had that female serial killer there. I may be wrong, but I think she did, like, go after men who she thought deserved a good killing.
Well, this is like the real-life American serial killer Eileen Wuornos, who her... story, and whether you believe her or not, it's not what we're talking about in this podcast, but she said that she only murdered men who deserved it, who were rapists, who she thought, shouldn't exist. Like, imagine if Daisy was just like an avenging angel.
I think that Charlotte Jordan would definitely have what it takes to pull it off.
Fantastic.
And
a femme fatale for sure.
Yeah.
Like, probably the sexiest villain we've ever had on Corrie.
Yeah, it would completely ruin the character. But I suppose Coronation Street would need to consider, if we've already gone down the route too much, is she beyond redemption?
The danger with hot and upcoming young stars like Charlotte Jordan is you're always thinking, if you're surely working on the show, if you're a producer or whatever, like, how long is she going to stay here? Is she going to springboard herself? Like R. Kelly.
Yeah, R. Kelly, Millie Gibson,
who was fantastic and wonderful and a bit of a villain herself, really, in a sense. Used Corrie as a springboard, and now she's going to be in Doctor Who. Charlotte Jordan, is she looking at her career and going, I want to stay in Corrie forever? Or is she looking at it and going, I want to go and do this and that and the other thing? And would going out, because you think about somebody like Michelle Keegan.
Yeah.
She went out as a victim. Now imagine going out as the perpetrator. Isn't that feminism?
It would be an interesting
Isn't that
change.
Empowerment for women? Instead of going out as the murder victim, just like Maxine Peacock too. All these women who have exited the show to go on to do other things with their career, and they've been murdered because that's the most shocking thing that can happen. No, being the murderer is the most shocking thing that can happen. If Charlotte Jordan ever wants to leave Corrie, sign me up on team make her a killer. Because that would be
doesn't
epic.
have to be a killer, does it?
Well, a villain to me, if you say who's a Corrie villain, I'm gonna say, I'm thinking murderer.
I know, but it could also be a blackmailer, it could be a con artist, it could be an arsonist, a drug dealer.
Well, one of the things that feminism has always struggled with is being equal to men. Does that mean that we copy or do the same as men do, or are the things that women are better at just different? Okay, so when I'm thinking of equality for women, as far as villainry is, and going down the route of copying what men do, I want more female murderers. I'm sorry, but I do.
Corrie had its first gay wedding this year, so maybe first female serial killer is just round the corner.
Is for women on Corrie is kind of really low stakes, isn't it? It's like cheating and lying and manipulating and blackmailing, and I think it's Maya and Tracy are probably the two worst female villains that have ever been. Maya didn't kill anybody, but she tried her hardest. Yeah. And Tracy did kill somebody in cold blood.
It really is slim pickings, isn't it? I'm still wondering whether Hope could go down that route.
Hope is my little what's the word, protege? The Padawan of killers on Corrie, the young Hope. I
don't know whether it's too obvious,
villains.
but and it's still too early. I mean, she's not going to be able to be a villain for another 7-8 years at least, probably.
We also
so
don't
I think
know
we
if
need
she's
to
going to
think a bit
swap heads.
shorter term. Exactly. But I think as an arsonist, it could work. It could, and especially if she sticks together with Sam, and he'd have to see through her sweet exterior to see the burning.
Young lovers, kind of star-crossed young lovers, where instead of they can't get together because their families don't agree, I don't know if I can be with her because she's a serial killer.
I wouldn't put it past Corrie to make Hope a villain at some point, or maybe there's a twist and it's Ruby. Nobody would expect Ruby to be a villain. Nobody
expects Ruby.
Exactly. So
I think them doing it
work
together, like a folie à deux, like those Swedish twins that ran into the motorway?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing that.
Let's
Sisters.
have that. Sisters doing it for themselves.
Yeah. Who else has kind of shown a bit of a dark streak in Coronation Street that could be tweaked out and turned into proper villain?
Female murderers, and we haven't mentioned Toya yet. And she did kill Imran not that long ago. She's the most, apart from Uncle Stephen, is she the most recent killer on Corrie? I think she is.
I don't think I could buy Toya as a murderer.
I don't. We didn't get to see any of Georgia Taylor's stint on Casualty. We didn't get to see her, but
We've seen clips.
Was it Ruth that she played a doctor called Ruth? She was a completely, we know that Georgia Taylor can play anything, and if you can take the bland businessman that was Stephen Reed and turn him into the most camp serial killer Corrie's ever seen, then you could do the same with Toya. Because she would also be one of these do-gooder women who goes, well, it's about time that you do. We heard that she was at the protest that we know. We were recording this in November when we just had Amy and the rest going on the spiking protest in the Northern Quarter, and we know that Toya was supposed to meet them there. What is she like? No one's here, so I'm just going to push someone in the canal again. The whole time she's been pushing people in the canal. Imagine that, following men around who are drunk and leering at women.
This is I
love it.
You can become a villain in a soap because of your principles, and
yes, and at the drop of a hat.
Yeah. Well, maybe
and people have gone turned into crazed serial killers with much fewer reason.
I quite like what you said about the Ruby and Hope villainous team up, but maybe Leanne and Toya could do it as well. I mean,
Yes!
Leanne has burned a restaurant down in the past. She's certainly not whiter than
Toya's
white.
killed a man. Yeah,
And
just imagine.
a villainous team up, a proper double act. Because often when there is a villain on Coronation Street, they're a lone wolf, aren't they?
And this is what we said
It's not Phelan and
time
Friend.
and again about... This is why Andy was a crucial character for the development of Pat Phelan as a villain, because he was somebody that Pat could go and talk to. And a lot of the time, we miss the internal monologue that justifies the serial killings or the killings of a character. So that's why, again, the device that they used when Stephen was killing Rufus, when he was speaking to Michael and reminiscing about the killing that he did of Rufus, Stephen was, sorry. That was a really good device for us to get inside Stephen's mind.
Yeah.
And they're so difficult to access otherwise. But having a duo of killers who can talk to one another and bounce off of one another and eventually, because this is a soap, betray one another. Now that
I could kind of see a story where there's mysterious bodies turning up or crimes, and then it turns out that it's Toya, and that surprises the viewers, and then they carry on, and you think it's Toya doing it, but then it's revealed that it's Leanne.
Well, you think, it can't be Toya because she was there when this happened.
And then it turns out Leanne, and they've actually been doing it together.
Okay, right. Stop the podcast, write this down, send it in.
I just don't think it stays true to character. I can imagine the two of them in that position going, hang on a minute, this isn't what we're like.
No.
I can't see that.
I don't want this to happen to those two characters because, as you pointed out at the very beginning, there is a shelf life. I do not want Leanne or Toya to leave the show. I don't want Daisy to leave the show. I don't want Hope or Ruby to leave the show.
I think that deep down, Toya especially is too good-hearted to go down that particular route. I don't know whether I'd say the same about Leanne, but maybe.
I don't know. I think if they had a choice, if they thought that it was, someone I love or XYZ. I know, let's face it, Toya killed Imran in a fit of rage.
I know, yes.
So she's not above it.
I don't see her as a schemer in that same way. What about...
No, it wasn't pre-planned.
What about like Todd or Daniel? Because they've both shown themselves to have dark sides.
Well,
Todd's a great character, but he has been underused and a little on the bland side, I'm afraid to say, in recent times. And maybe they need to hone in on that villainousness that he had in the past. But I don't know. I think
he got
again
quite involved in criminal activity. We don't know what really happened to him in London. He got a scar and he ran into the woods with
Summer.
With Summer, God knows what that did to her, but it wasn't good. That's possible. Daniel, on the other hand, he pushed Ken down the stairs.
I could absolutely see. I think that this would be a really good shout.
And
but if Rob Mallard had chosen to leave, he could absolutely play it. Daniel is absolutely
brooding,
he has been unhinged in the past. Yeah. I could totally see him plotting. You saw him push Max down the stairs the other year.
It's his speciality.
I think it would be a shorter jump for him to be the next villain than the likes of Leanne and Toya. If the character was choosing to leave, it'd be a big surprise, and I don't know what he'd be villainous about.
And again, using the phrase "unhinged" as a kind of shorthand for fictional.
Yeah, of course.
And it's important to me also that you pick somebody who hasn't had a mental health struggle on screen, who doesn't have something you can point at and say this stigmatizes people who have.
Yeah.
Because I don't... Did Daniel ever go to therapy or talk about... I
don't remember.
I mean, I'm sure that you could say he has X, Y or Z, but I think it is important for Coronation Street to not go down the route of stigmatising people with mental illness. But at the same time, you cannot pretend that there's not a massive history of people going off the deep end. I
just don't know whether I'd want to lose Daniel as the character he is. I think that there's far too much potential for keeping him in the show for many years to come. As great as I think he could be a villain. Okay,
I say the same thing about Charlie D'Amelio who played Imran, who was killed off by Toya. I would much rather have seen him turn into a villain and go out that way than I would have seen him become a victim. So imagine if Imran had worked out that Gary was the killer of his sister and that he'd also killed Rick in the woods, and then he, you know, went after Gary and it was a fight to the death in that way. To me, that is far more compelling and exciting than, oh, he got killed off by Toya and we're not gonna...
Whoever they choose, I'd like it to be somebody who has a gradual decline and not just this story they're going to turn bad. There needs to be it needs to be very long term planned and see him starting to have little hints, and then maybe 2 years time he's like, this is a villain. They're becoming a villain. I didn't realise it all along. I wouldn't want the producer of Corrie to say, well, everybody, what we're going to be seeing over the next 2 years is his descent into villainy. I kind of want to feel it for myself in a way. And then, you know.
I think a really good shout would actually be Summer. Summer, to me, she would be like the female version of John Stape if she became a villain. It would just be a comedy of errors where she continually tried to do the right thing. Like the last thing we saw her do on Wednesday in November this year was Amy tried to vandalise a police car and someone went, no, stop, and immediately drew everyone's attention to the fact that Amy was doing it. Summer's so hapless and like well-intentioned.
Yeah.
She's going through trauma at the moment because obviously Paul is going to die. Does she kind of like turn dark because of that, or does she just like try to help and like literally kill people with kindness? Can you imagine what that story would be like?
Yeah. I the other idea I had for Summer is like, does she join an evil cult and
she nearly
puts her in conflict with Billy?
Cult.
Maybe.
Well, there's loads of honestly, people think cults
are there any
like
other kind of bland characters that would be enlivened by making them villains? Like, I think, could Alia be a villain?
I tell you who's doing nothing at the moment.
What?
Simon's perfectly poised.
I don't think he's got the charisma.
Okay, but Simon's perfectly poised. I mean, you say that. The solution to that problem is recast.
They wouldn't. I can't see them
I'd rather
recasting Simon.
if I'm a
That'd be
producer,
real shame.
yeah, but I wouldn't want that to happen. But if I'm a producer and I'm saying I want to do something exciting with a Barlow, here's Simon. Like, imagine Simon doing, because he's just got such a big background.
He's got nothing to do at the moment
in criminal activity.
Yeah.
Drug deals gone wrong. Blackmail.
Yeah, I couldn't see Alex Bain's Simon turning into a villain.
Not at the moment,
maybe.
but listen, okay, you say that, but there are so many characters like Jude. Jude was just a big hunk of boring beige until he turned into a serial liar.
Yeah.
There are so many characters, and Ryan, we were saying,
he's not a villain.
No, but listen, we were saying, Ryan's got potential. Can we do this, that, the other thing? And then they gave him this massive story. There are so like Paul was bland, and then they gave him the story, and he rose to the occasion. Who's to say that Simon couldn't also?
Do you think that Craig could become a bad cop? Maybe under someone else's influence. Maybe not through his own way he does things.
Okay, right.
He could have he had a mentor, which was what's his face in the pedo ring, didn't he? No, was it Neil? And
I don't know.
If he had a mentor that led him down a dark path.
Okay, I'm loving this idea, because imagine Swain. Now she's been now she's had this meeting with, this interview with Amy where Amy was confronting her and saying, you're letting us down, police are letting us down. Imagine if she used Craig and kind of brainwashed Craig into doing her like the bad, doing the bad, because he's like physically very imposing. I think he could probably kill more people than Swain could. imagine if she kind of brainwashed him and sent him out as a minion, and she was saying to him, listen, Craig, we know this guy is an evil man, and he's like killed somebody and raped somebody and beaten somebody, and we just can't get the evidence because he's so slick and he intimidates all the witnesses, and there's nothing we can do about it, but he is going to be here at this time in the dark.
Are we kind of saying that in the story Craig is the lackey?
Yes.
And somebody else is the
one
puppet
of these,
master?
There are so many cool women cops on Corrie that are just bit parts, like Swain, like McKinnon, like, name any of them. They're all really interesting, and I would love... Can you imagine like a shadow team of female cops, all of them together, like with their hoods on at night, going, we're going to get Craig and we're going to send him.
The problem with that story is probably like he would realise... The end would be, I realise that what I'm doing is wrong, because... As dumb as Craig can be, I think he is a bit too good-hearted. Maybe villainy isn't quite for him. It wouldn't sit right with him.
I can write it any way I like. Don't you think that would be a really epic and fun idea? No? You don't like that idea?
Maybe. I just don't know whether it'd be true to character. I think he's
You
too
don't think
good
that Craig is gullible?
Yeah, no. I think that...
You're mad. Michael, can I just remind you that this is a man who was manipulated by his girlfriend into hiding evidence that proved that she was responsible for the death of the man that she ran over earlier last year. He's already proven that he is perfectly capable of abandoning his morals and his integrity as a police officer in order to do something that somebody is who's bats their eyelashes at him.
Would that make him a villain, or would that just make him the villain's puppet, though?
Well, I'm happy for puppets. I didn't see why we're prejudiced against Muppets and puppets.
A couple of others I was kind of thinking of. We know that Debbie has absolutely got the potential to be a villain. Could she and Ronnie team up? Because we still know so little about Ronnie. He seems to be a kind of generally a good guy, but if they wanted to say there's not much going on with this guy at the moment, let's make him go down the dodgy route, they could. Debbie and him were doing that sneaky deal with the Rovers shares in the summer, weren't they? So we know that he's not above doing morally ambiguous or grey things. So it could work, maybe. And he's a tough guy. He could certainly
he's buff.
Give people a good pasting.
He could have smashed somebody's face into a wall.
I'm still wondering whether Joel, this bland solicitor, is... I don't trust him.
Joel is certainly the sort of man who I can imagine, after spending a hard day at work defending the potentially innocent but also the criminals of Weatherfield as a public defender, goes home to his incredibly bland white
magnolia walled
IKEA filled, and I say that as a woman who's staring at my IKEA furniture right now, IKEA furnitured house, and putting on a suit, like zipping up, the sort of thing you'd wear if you were going to paint everything, and going into the middle of his completely empty living room where somebody's tied to a chair screaming, and going, no, you did do the crime, didn't you? And you thought I would defend you. You know how hard my job is and how much time I spend trying to help people in your situation, and you go ahead and do what you did? No. I've got to make sure that you pay, even if the justice system doesn't do it.
I'd love that.
And then he puts his little mask on, his little blue mask on, and then he just hacks them to death.
I'd like the idea of that. Yeah, he's certainly got an air of villainousness about him. And
in the background, the music's playing. Swing it, shake it, move it, make it harder you think you are. Do you not think he's definitely a Spice Girls fan, Joel?
No, don't.
Yes. I would love that.
Anyone else? Lauren could probably... I wonder if the Coronation Street are trying to make us like her and say, look, she's so tragic, she's not bad really. But if that doesn't work and it's feeling like from viewer reactions people are still not loving that character, could Coronation Street say, well, screw it, let's make her a villain after all? And I think she'd probably do quite a good job of that.
I could talk an hour about Lauren.
Well, we haven't got an hour, so you can't.
No, Yeah,
So
I mean, the twist would be that she really is the horrible racist that I've been saying that she is all along.
So who are our picks then after all of that? So
I want a female
It needs
villain.
to feel realistic. You want a female villain, do you?
We've been saying, Conor McIntyre, when he left as Pat Phelan, we did a big show where we talked about all of, Pat's history, and we had an interview with him. And one of the things that he said that I've always agreed with is that Corrie needs a big female villain. And we knew that, once Pat was off the show, they'd leave it a certain amount of time, but there would be another villain. And although I love Uncle Stephen, and I think it's really cool that they use a legacy character, which is kind of unusual for Corrie, really, don't you think? A legacy character being a villain. Each character's had a unique perspective, the unique element about them, and that was Stephen's. But I really feel like I would rather, I wish that they had done a female villain. So I'm gunning for that. I don't want to wait that long for Hope. I'd rather it was somebody who's in the show now.
Yeah.
I just honestly think if Daisy's gonna ever leave, then
I think
with
that
her
would be
also
a good
don't forget
shout.
her background with what she did to Ryan, where she pretended that the whole date rape thing and then the drugging him. We know that she's
And we also still don't know exactly what happened when Tom died in that paddling pool.
We don't know what happened there. We know that she's she's got trauma. She could take revenge. Imagine if just 5 years down the line she gets confronted with Justin again. She kills him. This would be one of those things where Corrie starts off with a serial killer, villain, whatever you want to say. They always start off with a killing where you're like, oh, I guess I can see how that happened. And then they eventually descend into absolute chaos and just start killing everybody. You could certainly see Daisy's first victim being Justin Rutherford, who was her stalker, who ruined the love of her life, Ryan's life forever.
Yeah. I think that's...
Who burned her, who ruined her wedding day, who's the reason that she's not together with Daniel, etc., etc.
I think that's not a bad shout. And even from the beginning, she was a bit of a
She was
mischievous
always
one,
a villain.
wasn't she?
She was a villain when she came in the sort of a very, in a very kind of small way that female villains can be on Coronation Street.
But
sometimes.
she could be like a Tanya Pooley kind of
I
femme
want Mad
fatale.
Maya. 2.0, sorry.
Okay, so are we saying Daisy now? But I think that somebody like...
I would never want to... I would just to be clear, I never want to lose her. I think she's fantastic. Charlotte Jordan, a star power on Corrie. She's phenomenal. She's electric. She's worked so well with all the characters. They've got a massive following for her, which is well deserved. I would never want to lose her in a million years. But if I was producer and she came into me and said, I'm leaving Corrie, I would say, guess what? I've got a brilliant idea.
What about Ardy? Because I know what he's a bit dopey and lovable and doofusy now, but he's clearly going down the business route. And like we said earlier,
Corrie
Coronation
hates
Street
businessmen.
hates businessmen. There very much could be a power going to his head kind of thing. And
that would be really fun because then you get this good versus evil with Ardy and
Asher. Good to an evil
Asher's
twin.
such a goody two shoes. Imagine if she found out what her brother was up to. And also Dev, like, I know that Dev's a comedy character for most of the time, but Jimmy Harkison's can turn in such amazingly powerful performances. And imagine their reactions when they found out. And like, and also the amount of times that Ardy would beat himself up. What would my mum say? I'm letting my family down, etc., etc.
If he suddenly just gets the money starts rolling in then and he sees the advantages that brings to his life, I could see him getting turned.
Well, we all know who we want his first victim to be, don't we?
Courtney?
Yeah.
He doesn't need to be a murderer. I think
I'm
that
sorry,
having him as a
you say to me villain, I say
I know,
murderer.
there's many types of villain, and I think just general tycoon kind of businessman character that is a thorn in people's side, and and just is very smug
Yeah, but
and
you're talking about an
self-satisfied.
antagonist.
Yeah.
That's different.
Oh, it's similar enough to me. Right, we need to move on. That's plenty of discussion. As always with these things, we haven't got an exact answer, but we got a few ideas for you. Maybe that's sparked a few ideas for people at home. Should we move on to the next question?
I think so.
Okay, so Penelope has been our next person to email us in a question for our listener questions part. Thank you, Penelope. She says, if characters who rarely interact formed an unexpected alliance for a common goal, what would the goal be?
Murder.
No, we're not having murders anymore.
We've done it
Gemma.
already, Penelope.
Stop
Listen
going
back.
on about it. How would their unique skills or personalities contribute to the success of the mission? So we've got unconventional team-ups. I do like it when characters who aren't usually in a scene together are thrown together for some reason. It just feels a bit different and interesting. We had it last week with Bernie and Abby when they were sitting together downstairs in number 5. It's like, oh, I don't know whether these have ever spoken to each other before. And that scene, apart from the fact that the performances and the script was fantastic, just the novelty of it. Made it very watchable. So I like the idea of throwing together characters with people that they haven't really had much to do with.
Normally it's family stuff, isn't it? There are a lot of chalk and cheese family members who team up, but they're people that normally would be together. So
I think that there's probably quite a lot to choose from here, because I would say most characters on Coronation Street have got a relatively small group of characters that they would interact with.
If you're doing one of those little charts where you draw a line, you have a bubble and you draw a line to how much they talk to each other.
And that's a real change from the early days, isn't it? Back when the cast was so small, everybody had scenes with everyone else for some reason. I know you had a few, like the Factory Girls back in the 60s, who didn't really speak to many people, but generally you could fit the whole cast into the Rovers at once, so everyone would have some opportunity for a sort of crossover. But these days, with the cast the size it is, and of course the filming blocks that they do, that's not always possible. And there's probably loads of pair-ups there that you'd never realise, oh, these characters have got perfect chemistry, let's put them together and make a great story out of it.
Well, I mean, one of the things you like to ask people when you do an interview with them for the show is like, who would you like to have worked with?
Yeah, that you never got a chance to.
And there's always loads of. It's always easy for people to go, oh yeah, I would have loved to have done a scene with X, Y, or Z.
Yeah, sometimes it's like, oh, I never really got a scene with Ken. I'd like to have had a scene with him just because he's Ken. But yeah, sometimes you get the idea that
she's just Barbie.
Sometimes you get an idea that I think that my character would spark off that particular character very well.
Petition for Ken to get a new dog called Barbie.
Okay. Have you? Who would you say in the past has been able to work with somebody and form an unexpectedly interesting partnership on Corrie?
Well, I mean, the romance between Bernie and Dev was a great example because they're chalk and cheese.
Yeah, they work well. I would have never put them together, but actually they do work well.
When you're thinking about putting characters together, you're either going to be like, oh, hello, I'm your new family member. So Daisy, ending up embroiled in the heart, in the bosom of the Barlows through her relationship with Daniel. Or like getting a job. So, for example, Lauren working at Roy's Rolls with all these characters that she never would have ever spoken to before. I'm trying to think of that. It's just
with Lauren, it's a little bit
family,
different because she's new anyway. But yeah, Daisy had been on the show for a little while before she became embroiled with the Barlows. That's true. I would say, thinking about other unexpectedly successful pair-ups in the past, Tracy and Todd worked well behind the counter at Preston's Petals, didn't they? Because they were both particularly cynical and sort of spiky characters themselves. And even Tracy with Mary, unexpectedly worked well. Tracy with Abbott,
they would never hang out together.
No, Tracy's had quite a few pair-ups that work well.
Honestly,
with that, and you would have never thought to put them together.
Even Tracy and Steve are a weird pairing, even though I love them.
But with Abby as well, I kind of mentioned there with Tracy, I've always said that Abby is the kind of character that you could throw into a scene with anybody and it would automatically elevate that scene. I think that Sally Carman just brings out the best in everybody that she acts opposite of,
Yes,
to be honest.
I mean, here's a good example of a very recent one where characters who really interact form an unexpected alliance for a common goal. Ed walking in on everyone trying to scoop Paul out of the bath is a fairly good one.
Yeah, I mean, Ed had
being,
some...
Yeah,
he'd worked with Paul.
Ed kind of walking in on this kind of like the gay dads alliance, trying to, you know, being recruited for help so they could get him out of the bath. That led to a really lovely scene where Ed's like, I don't know what you're doing and I don't understand it, but, you know, I'm a good person and we're all human beings, so let's just get on with it. And then he, from that kind of very uncomfortable initial situation, you feel like he's grown as a person now, because he's been around a very intimate scene, and it challenged him, because do not forget, and I think we all have, his reaction to his son coming out as gay. He hated it.
Yeah, that's true.
I that didn't even cross my mind until now.
No.
But, you know, he was, I would say, you know, far be it from me to brush somebody with a label. I would never do that. But wasn't he slightly homophobic? And that, you know, now he's helping Paul out of the bath when he was having a romantic tryst with his husband.
I think
what a moment of character growth, and that came from an unexpected alliance.
I think that once Paul is gone, developing the relationship between Ed and Billy might be quite good, because they're both... neither of them are crazy party animals. They're both kind of wise men of the world. I know Billy used to be more of one in the past, but I think I could see scenes of those two teaming up and having just a good old chat together over a pint in their overs. That could be quite...
Well, let's talk about, you know, the obvious issue here is that the Bailey's very separated.
Well, that's why I'd like to find Ed somebody to team up with.
You know, the racial divide here, if there is one, but the common what's the word, connection is religion.
Yeah.
Because Ed's homophobia was apparently, I think, partly informed by his religious beliefs that we never really went into.
No, they've been kind of forgotten since, haven't they? They did talk about Ed and Aggie going to church.
Yes, I know, but they're a religious family. Dee Dee's not. You know, Dee Dee was talking about the fact that she found solace in religion when she moved to LA and she was lonely, but that didn't come from nowhere.
No.
She's obviously got a family background to seek help from a church. Not everybody would think to do that. There's a reason why she's doing that. But Billy and Ed, you know, in the wake of Paul's death, finding meaning in life, you know, that's a common goal, isn't it?
Yeah. Going
to church together, perhaps Billy, you know, saying, Dee Dee told me, or Paul told me that Dee Dee took her to church. What church did you go to? And you know, Ed saying, hey, come to a service with me. That would, I think those kinds of connections, unexpected connections, can be some of the most human and interesting and deep things that a soap can do.
Yeah.
Because the thing about modern life is that we all feel very separate from one another. And when you go on the internet, it's so easy to find a group of people that you feel deeply understand you, because you can find the most niche collection of people you could possibly imagine. But in real life, therefore, the contrast, you feel as though the people around you can't understand them because you think of all the differences. So soaps doing this kind of connecting people is a really important thing, I think, to show we can bridge these gaps. We're all humans. We all have the same basic needs, and we're all generally decent people underneath all these kind of layers of likes and dislikes. So that scene, I think that's one of the things, the bath scene, that's one of the reasons why it spoke so deeply to so many of us. Because even if you don't feel like you could connect to anyone's individual experience, like, I'm not a black builder, I'm not a gay man, I'm not a vicar, but there was a real human connection that I felt to everybody in that scene, because they they were all just being there together and helping one another on a very basic level. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I don't know if I'm making any sense.
And that's which is why I would like to see more of the Billy and Ed relationship. I'd like to see that stick.
Yeah, do you think
because Billy's going to be grieving,
yeah,
and I think that Ed could be really supportive.
But when you see those connections that are unexpected on a soap, it gives you hope, doesn't it? It makes you think that if only you could find the one thing you could both agree on, you could be friends with anybody. And I know that there are lots of people that are terrible, etc., etc. But isn't that just what we kind of want from life? Just to be able to understand one another and get along.
Yeah.
That's. I know it's a Disney-fied version of life, but when you see something like that, it really warms your heart and makes you feel good about life. I know maybe it's silly.
No. The Penelope's question as well was, what would their common goal that they'd be teaming up for, rather than just being friends?
You know, the bath scene was a very short-term goal, wasn't it? And it was a clear objective. It felt like a side quest in a computer game.
What about Michael Bailey? Because he doesn't really have a friend, does he? No. I'd quite like to see him team up with Ryan, and they've not had anything to do with each other. But I think that
entrepreneurs. Now they both have.
Well, Ryan's not an entrepreneur.
DJ Ryan.
Yeah.
Yes, he is an entrepreneur.
Is he?
Do you think that DJs are employed by some kind of central agency?
So is Michael going to become?
Person. Listen, when you're a creative person, unfortunately, it comes with the burden of having to be an entrepreneur. You've got to be your own hype man. You've got to be an accountant. You've got to promote yourself. He is an independent businessman with no business sense. Okay, the only way he could think of making money was to go on OnlyFans. So him and Michael teaming up, I could see them sparking off each other, because you've got Ryan with the creativity and the kind of drive to promote himself, and then Michael, he's always trying to think of business things.
Yeah, I just think that their personalities and the fact that neither of them are the cleverest people, but they've both shown themselves to be quite full of energy, and
they've got a lot of heart and loyalty.
Yeah, they absolutely do. I think that they could be, you know, along the same lines as a Steve and Tim or a Steve and Lloyd kind of friendship, but if only Underworld was a completely different business, honestly. Well, you know what I mean? You can just imagine. I can't see Ryan ever going, I've got a sudden passion for women's underwear. but if Underworld was anything else, it's in the same way that they made up this completely fictitious idea that Michael's got a passion for t-shirt slogans. Yeah. Who else hasn't got somebody? Who else needs a partner?
Well, I mean, you're saying is it definitely two people, or can it be more characters that rarely interact? I mean, you're talking about entrepreneurs. What about Chesney? His Chesburger idea.
Yeah, who could develop that with him?
Michael and Ryan.
Do you reckon?
Oh, I would love that idea.
That wouldn't be a bad
team. Those three
would it?
Getting into business together. You'd have Chesney doing the recipe development and the kind of like the businessy kind of thing, and maybe Ryan would be like the hype man and promoter, and then Michael would be like the one who's driving creativity and coming up with new ideas and new markets. I'd like to see
Ches have something to get excited about, and maybe working with those two to promote his Ches burger.
Do you think he can physically produce a smile anymore?
I don't know. This would be the story that proves it, wouldn't it? I was thinking like Brian is in desperate need of a partner, because since Kathy left, was it last year or the year before, I can't even remember, he's been really floating about, and they've had a bit of him with Rita in the cabin, but I wouldn't say they're that much of a double act because Rita's not in it very much.
What do we know about Brian?
He's intelligent.
He's intelligent. He's an ex-teacher, so maybe there's some kind of child thing there.
Yeah.
He's also... He cares about the business as like a local community thing, but he also likes gardening.
Yeah.
So that make local gardening children. Maybe he could make some kind of like gardening club that went into Victoria Gardens, and maybe who like Alia.
I'm thinking,
younger.
That doesn't inspire me.
It doesn't inspire me either. But younger people who might Maybe Tyrone going, I want the kids to get involved in gardening. What do you think? Who do you see with him?
I don't know. I mean, I really, really enjoyed the small amount that we saw of him and Abby together a few years ago. And
when was that? What happened there?
You know, like with the victim's statement, and also he was there teaching her her English, wasn't he, for a GCSE? And maybe Abby could discover her green fingers, and maybe she might be tempted to grow some illegal substances in the.
That would be really good fun.
In Brian's allotment.
Imagine if Brian and Abby kind of signed up for an allotment together.
Yeah, that would be a great chalk and cheese relationship, and sometimes those can be the best. Couldn't they?
Can you imagine Abby being like, "Oh, sorry, I didn't know that you would be such a." Complain so much about the fact I left beer cans in the.
And Abby does bring out the best in characters, and I think Brian could sometimes do with a little bit of a. But I think Brian could maybe do with a bit of pepping up from somebody.
Yeah, maybe Abby comes home and she starts waxing lyrical about broad beans, and Kevin doesn't understand her, so she has to go and buy a quarter of butter toffees from Brian to get him to talk to her.
I do think that Abby could work with anybody.
Abby's fantastic.
Shona, she doesn't have a friend, and I think that Abby and Shona, they'd make a brilliant, vibrant, lively, fun.
Oh, of course they would, but it doesn't feel unexpected though.
It's unexpected in a way that it doesn't need. The question was characters who rarely interact, and those two don't.
Yeah.
Would they go into business together, or would they just be mates? They feel like they're mates that just for some reason haven't happened. They they would team up with the common goal of having a good time together. Maybe.
Are there any lovers that would get together?
What is it?
Characters who really interact as a common goal of getting it on.
I don't know whether this question is kind of going down that route of the romance, because that's something separate. I don't know. I just kind of can't get away from the idea of putting Abby with anyone. Abby and Glenda would work. Anyone. Yeah.
Abby's like bread in a sandwich. You can have any filling you like.
Amy and Roy, I think, would be quite good. I mean, I suppose Roy and Brian have had a partnership, a friendship.
Roy and Amy, can I just say,
Roy and Amy has got some. No, I was wanting to say that there was definitely some untapped something with Roy. I can never remember what Amy knows about when she was Patience.
Okay, the background there is that Roy and
Roy thought
Tracy,
that he was her
Tracy
dad.
tricked Roy into thinking that she had been impregnated by him, and then he thought that Amy was his daughter before she was born, and he and Hayley were going to adopt her and call her Patience.
And Amy is very intelligent, and I think would work well with Roy. We've already seen him have a lovely relationship with Nina, and I wouldn't say that Amy is a million miles away.
Yeah, that's not different enough.
It's not different enough, but I think it could work. It could be fun. I don't know what they'd do particularly.
I think I'm going to say that it feels to me like Roy and Abby are kind of cheat codes. You can put them with anyone.
Yeah.
Because they're so... Right, Abby is so easy to get on with, and Roy is just so unlike everybody that he becomes the contrast to almost any character, and it becomes more interesting to watch because of that reason.
Evelyn's another one that's really popular at the moment that you could probably say.
Evelyn's so hot right now.
Is there an unexpected who would Evelyn work with?
Well, that's why it's really fun to watch her with her grandchildren, isn't it? Because they're just completely different from one another.
Is there like a young version of Evelyn who she could discover and they could just have a bitch about people with?
Nina and Evelyn.
Yeah,
honestly,
and they're not a million miles away because of the Roy connection.
If Evelyn was 50 years younger, she'd be a goth.
Could Nina convince Evelyn to go goth now? I think that Nina and Toya would work well as a friendship. They've dipped their toe in there in the past, haven't they, with having them go off on protests together. But I think Toya is in dire need of a friend. She's barely even got a job or somewhere to live.
Toya and...
Nina.
No, Toya and Evelyn.
Maybe.
I can imagine Evelyn confessing to Toya that she burned her bra. Can't you?
Yeah.
And maybe you could get really dark with it and sort of have Evelyn say to Toya, I saw you in Spider doing this, that and the other, and it makes me sad because, you know, I feel like all the things I did when I was a kid, and I'm wondering whether Hope and Ruby are going to get the chance because of global warming, which we know is a thing that Toya and Spider were really concerned about. I mean, it depends. I know that Coronation Street are very into being green, and we had all the stuff with Maria, and you know, the recycling and the parking and the pollution and the green spaces. It felt preachy. Would Toya and Evelyn be able to get a message across that felt a bit less so?
I think Toya would still come across as preachy, but I think Evelyn
tempers it, maybe.
Yeah. That could work.
What about Maria and who's... Because you see, this is the thing. So when you're saying characters that really interact with each other, I'm also thinking characters that don't make logical sense to be friends, which is why Maria and David always work so well, because they're, you know, so different from one another.
Do you think that Evelyn and Sam could make a good team up? Maybe when he's a little bit older, I don't know, but I could almost see them sitting at a bar together and
saying the same things.
Yeah, because I can imagine Sam as being a bit of a gossip and not nasty, but the fact that Sam likes Hope and she's kind of nasty, I could see him maybe trying to temper her.
Well, imagine Evelyn saying something like, you know, when I was a girl, when we thought about the future, I thought I'd be living on Mars, but you could actually do it. That would be a really touching conversation to talk about the hopes of older generations and whether young people still share those dreams, because, you know, every generation has their own obsessions, and Sam's is kind of, it feels like it's come round in a full circle, do you know? I feel like we missed out on the kind of the big space exploration bug, our generation, because we were like, we're never gonna, no one cares about going to the moon, and we can't go to Mars.
Yeah, but now it's back again.
But now there's a real possibility that the first person to go to Mars is alive right now.
Yeah.
And they're not our age, are they?
No.
But Evelyn would have been the sort of person, you know, of the generation that were like, wow, go to the moon, amazing.
I just think that Evelyn might see something in Sam and because she doesn't suffer fools gladly, and Sam is by no means a fool, and I think that she might quite like the idea of having an intelligent discussion with him.
Well, he's also, you know, you can imagine her sitting down with him and going, listen, if you're going to be dating my granddaughter, I want to get to know you a bit better.
Yeah, they could actually. That would make a great scene. And I think that it might soften Evelyn. But maybe she wouldn't like to admit that she was enjoying Sam's company because she doesn't like to show her weaknesses, and I think she would consider that a weakness, hanging out with a 13-year-old.
But you can imagine how cute it would be for her to have Sam be like, Leanne, I won't be home for dinner tonight. Like, what are you doing? Like, well, me and Evelyn are going to the what's it called where you look at stars inside? Planetarium. I was like, it's not arboretum because that's trees. But it sounds similar.
Right, another idea that I had about a team up, and I don't think these characters often have much to do with each other. I think that Dev and Brian could be quite silly. I think that a story
they could
where
have a
they're
rivalry, but then they team up.
Well, yeah, I think that a team up where there's a risk of both of their businesses, the corner shop and the cabin, being closed because of the threat of Freshco's going big, or, you know, the small business owner fighting against the conglomerate. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Sort of business. Whatever. I think that could be good. And they're both so silly. That could be quite a funny...
Oh, they're hammy, aren't they?
They're both mega hams. And it could be cringy, but I wouldn't mind trying it out. Dev and Brian, I think that... They're, I don't know.
Yes, because it'd be fun, like, to focus on the initial misgivings they would have. Like, you know, Brian would distrust Dev because of his Lothario kind of status and his kind of upper middle class kind of like golfing and all private school and all this kind of stuff. And Dev might think that Brian's too standoffish and doesn't loosen up, and maybe they go and get drunk together at the...
I wonder whether Dev would like try and invest in the cabin to try and secure or bolster
Offset,
the two businesses, and Brian wouldn't like that. He'd want to keep it independent.
He's very proud. They're both proud.
I think that there would be a lot of bickering in
Yeah.
how's the best way to take down this external threat from Freshco's.
That would be fun.
Yeah, but they'd be united against this common enemy. Oh,
Yeah, I like that idea.
Yeah.
That's fun.
What else? I had to go through ideas. I'm trying to remember. I was thinking of Evelyn. Could she team up with Chesney because they both like dogs? I don't know. No, not inspiring anything.
Dog walking
Not
service.
that fun, really, is it? It's not. That doesn't sound like that great a relationship, but the greatest story.
I think we've come up with some good ideas.
What about do you remember? Was it last year when Alia worked at the got the job at the solicitor's office?
I think she still works there.
I don't really know, maybe, but they made a big thing, and they were like publicity photos of, hey, Dee and Alia, they're the new great team. Do you remember?
Yes,
they
of
made a
course I
huge
do.
thing
Okay,
about it,
silly.
and for about 2 weeks, Dee and Alia were the next hot pairing in Coronation Street.
And they were like, I'm going to look at this
nothing has
paperwork.
happened with them since. I don't. Could Dee make Alia more interesting, because she's certainly rocketed in popularity. She's
Deedee's
really
very
gone down
popular.
well. And
Well, no, I
putting Dee with different people, not
Deedee's
quite the
good.
same level as Abby, but
It works.
she's certainly fun.
Well, I think the question is, who could Alia team up with to make her interesting?
Yeah, and Dee is a possibility, but
they're already together.
Yeah, they are.
This
But
is,
let's see them interact socially,
Yeah, I know,
and
but
not
this
just
is
looking over paperwork together at
characters
the
that didn't-
lawyer's office.
Yeah, but they're too similar. Mm-hmm. No, the thing is about those two characters, what's the initial question? Just go back to it.
Characters that who rarely interact.
See?
Yeah. I suppose
Okay,
they do rarely interact.
And
They don't rarely
the
interact.
unspoken element of that question is also who are dissimilar to one another. And I would say that as young professional women of colour in Weatherfield, they are like kind of foregone conclusion friends. There's nothing interesting or exciting about, oh look, Dee and Alia are going out for a meal. Oh wow, I would never have seen them together. What do you mean? They hang out together all the time. Who could Alia be with that would make her...
Alia can be very principled, sometimes to an annoying
Playface.
level. So maybe
Some might say, like me.
Maybe
apparently.
does she turn down? Does she team up with somebody to take down a villain? If there's
someone who doesn't care, someone who's blue. Didn't she have something going on with Gary at one point?
Yeah.
They were
she
going
lost her
out.
virginity to Gary, I think.
That's unfortunate because those two do feel like completely opposite. Her and David, Alia and David, Alia and
maybe it's a really difficult one. What kind of villain, if we're going down that route, would Alia want to take down? Was it a rival business owner, or is it
someone who's doing boring things like?
I can see her.
Dumping chemicals in the canal. Or something.
I could maybe see her teaming up with Amy, because last year she was.
I suppose they do. They don't interact.
No, they don't interact, and they're both very principled, aren't they?
Oh my god, though! Imagine.
Would it be a bit of a preachy, too much of a preachy team up?
I think everyone would turn it off.
This
This is the thing about being a young woman
really
with principles. Unfortunately, makes you a target. Okay, Alia and Steve. Can you think of somebody who's got fewer principles and is less PC than Steve? Not very many other characters are as, he's kind of like a slobby layabout, kind of like Lister in Red Dwarf now. Do you not think? A guy who's only concerned with physical pleasures and not worrying about the future and things. And maybe what's happened to Amy...
But I don't know what...
Maybe what's happened to Amy makes him suddenly gain some kind of social consciousness, and he realises that he's in danger of leaving the world a worse place than it was when he found it. And
it certainly raised some
I can't
suspicions
think of
with
anything
Tracy.
interesting that the two of them could do together.
No, there's also the potential of do we have two characters joining up to form a business? If Underworld finally goes under and there's a new factory that goes there, we always wanted there to be a food factory. So does Stu team up with Michael to do that, or I don't know.
That could be quite fun, I guess.
I just a bit fed up with the factory or the Rovers team. You know, we don't know what's going to happen to the Rovers when it eventually, and you know it's going to happen at some point, isn't it? Reopen. Is Jenny still going to be there, or are they going to have a new Rovers team thrown together?
I think the Rovers team they've got is good.
I'd quite like to see Sally invest in the Rovers. I think that Sally and Jenny could at times work well, but also completely get up each other's noses. I think that's rife for comedy potential. That don't you think? Because they've already locked horns in the past. I think when Jenny came back into it, whenever that was, she and Sally had some unfinished business, and wasn't Jenny trying to thwart her plans to be a councillor or a mayor or something? I can't remember, but I think that Sally's been in the show such a long time, and it's almost like a rites of passage to stand behind the bar of the Rovers. Maybe having, it feels like she's kind of destined in a way to be in the Rovers, but I don't want Jenny to go. So I'm thinking of maybe a partnership there could work. It doesn't seem to be inspiring you. Anything else?
I think we've come up with quite a few examples of some good ones.
So should we?
Do you not think?
I don't know whether we've got the absolute yes. Of course, these two are clamouring to be next to be with each other. Obviously, to put these two together, the chemistry would be clear. But I'd like to see them try it a little bit more. Just experiment with different pairings, rather than sticking with the same characters being with the ones that they always have. And it's not that they never do. I mean, having Lauren with Ryan just recently was something that we wouldn't have necessarily expected to see happen. Did we see fireworks or the brilliant chemistry between them then? Not necessarily, but it was nice to try. So and also when we had, like we said, Abby and Bernie, when we had Evelyn and Co in the factory last week was kind of fun. Evelyn versus Carla, that was enjoyable.
Evelyn and the rest in the factory was a cool idea, but it didn't go anywhere.
No, not at all. It was just that. Oh, wouldn't it be funny if Evelyn worked in the factory? Yeah. So try throwing more people together. Coronation Street.
See what sticks.
It just more community, more people getting together just because they happen to live on the same street. And
I mean, for example, we had the whole Brian talking about signing up everybody to go and dredge the canal and tidy the canal up.
Yeah.
That could have been a really fun example of a bunch of people hanging out that never really would. Like, you know, I can see Brian and Nina in their gloves with their sticks poking at the depths, seeing if they can find any dead bodies.
Dead bodies down there.
You know?
Nina would love that.
More things that make sense in modern life as to why you would get people that would never normally hang out together. Fun.
Yeah. Okay, well let's leave it there then. I don't know whether I'm not convinced we've come up with brilliant answers for that one, so we do apologise to Penelope.
Well, we're not getting paid for this.
No, it's not. But if any of our listeners have got any brilliant ideas, or we were getting close to something but didn't quite touch on it, do write in and let us know. We have had a couple of...
We're just giving ideas for free, you know.
We've had a couple of suggestions for the answers to these questions from some of our listeners already. Nancy has also suggested Beth as a villain, and likes the idea of an Amy and Nina team up. I think that they could work well as both principled, intelligent characters. Chesney and Ryan, an interesting pair.
I mean, that was the two of the trio I suggested, with Michael being the third.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, and Toya and Gail as a team up. Nancy suggests. I think that would be the nail in the coffin for Toya if they try and team her up with her. Honestly, I don't think it would work. Navdeep has suggested Eliza as a demon child for Corrie's next villain. maybe killing Dom and her and Stu teaming up to hide the body. How does that?
I wouldn't say no.
How does that float your boat?
Wouldn't say no.
Jack has just said, as we did earlier, Debbie Webster would make a fabulous villain.
We didn't really go very much into Debbie being a villain, did we?
We didn't, but it kind of almost goes without saying. But I really, really, really would not want her to have a shelf life.
Well, this is why she's...
But to give her...
This.
If she was a villain I suppose it was a bit like when we said a few weeks ago, have Stephen kill off Dr. Gaddis, because it at least give Gaddis some time in the spotlight. If we had a couple of good years of villain at front and centre of Coronation Street, but the price of it was that she was out of the street by the end of it.
I just had a good idea.
Maybe I would. What?
Can you just imagine if Debbie had a special pair of murder earrings?
Murder earrings.
That she was like, right, you know how like
murder earring.
Well, you know, like when you see the in a movie, the montage of somebody getting ready to go and do something.
Yeah.
You can just imagine, like, Debbie putting on a pair of earrings. You're like...
Like her lucky earrings.
These are the murder earrings that she always wears when she's going to murder somebody.
So this would be like the black gloves, the Richard Hillman black gloves.
And instead of having black gloves, she could have special earrings.
I think those ones that she has that look like the holy hand grenades.
You're talking about the Vivienne Westwood ones.
Jack also says about Debbie, she's already been a bit mischievous in the past, but that could spill into downright wickedness. I could see her cutting the brakes on a car or something. Maybe if Uncle Ronnie does the dirty on her. Oh yeah, I love it.
I can imagine how much fun would it be, the juxtaposition of the two physical presences, because Uncle Ronnie's like, you know, big and buff, and then you got Debbie who's so petite and blonde.
Slight, yeah.
And then her dispatching Uncle Ronnie. Wouldn't that just inspire us women to know that we could do anything?
Jack also says that Ryan and Michael would be a good pair. We said that earlier, didn't we?
That's a good,
Going into business together. They're both very ambitious, but a bit useless. So together they could dream big, and there could be lots of comedy there. Yeah, no, I agree. I think
that's
a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay, well, there we go. There's our listener questions for the week. Thank you for listening, everybody.
Thank you for sending
in your questions. Put them on our Facebook group or email them. We collect them all together, and we eventually get around to a good chunk of them.
Yeah.
But that is it. Ta-ra. We're going to go and have our dinner now. Gemma?
Au revoir.
Goodbye.